Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, Starbucks is about to become the biggest spirit Halloween in the entire U.S. But before we get to any of that, time for your daily dose of adrenaline.
You want me to stick this into my heart? Are you f***ing nuts?
I am beginning to wonder if there is any government where everything's on the up and up. If there is any government agency where everything's kosher. I just think we just see fraud wrapped in scandal, wrapped in scams, you name it. Today, federal authorities raided more than 20 locations, including child care facilities, in Minneapolis as part of a sweeping fraud investigation into the Somali-owned businesses. And according to Fox News, a Department of Justice spokesperson told them today with the FBI, with federal, state, local law enforcement, is involved in court-authorized law enforcement activity as part of an ongoing fraud investigation. Authorities executed 22 federal search warrants in Minnesota as part of the operation. One of them was the Quality Learing Center. That's right, that allegedly fraudulent daycare that Nick Shirley exposed with a cell phone. These locations, I believe all of them, were exposed by Nick Shirley. So one kid, who's 23, with a cell phone, now triggered not just a governor to end his future political aspirations for fully investigating the fraud, right, Tim Walz? Not only that, but now the feds are raiding all these locations. Let's not forget that the Quality Learing Center closed after Shirley's investigation. First, they brought in a bunch of fake kids, then they closed. You want to know how Nick Shirley's onto something? I'll prove it. Where are all the adults protesting that their kids don't have to go to schools anymore? Or that they don't have a school to go to anymore? Where are all of them? Where are all the kids like, they shut down my school, I just wanted to play at recess? Where are those kids? They don't exist. The raids center on federal fraud investigations into largely Somali-owned businesses, including child care facilities that registered their daycares with the federal government and receiving funding from many local governments. They registered the daycares with the state for allegedly billing for care that was not provided. Vice President J.D. Vance wrote on X, the task force and the DOJ will be relentless in exposing these fraudsters wherever they may be hiding. Okay. Then here comes Tim Walz. That's right. Here's what Tim Walz says. If you commit fraud in Minnesota, you're going to get caught. And that's exactly what we saw today. We catch criminals when state and federal agencies share information. Joint investigations work, and securing justice depends on it. Hey, Timmy, little Timmy, how come you didn't investigate the fraud all the years you were in office until some kid came a-knocking with a cell phone camera? How come you never investigated any of this? And aren't you the same guy who's been demonizing the federal government for 2-3 years now? Right. While you were running against Trump, then after Trump gets elected. So you're now taking credit for this? He says today's raids by state and federal law enforcement happened because our state agencies caught irregular behavior and reported it. That's how the system is supposed to work. And our agencies will keep at it as long as there are fraudsters around to put behind bars. Why didn't you do it all the years you were in office? Why are there reports, documented reports of your inspectors trying to report this stuff, whistleblowers trying to report this stuff, and your government officials telling them there's no there, put it away, because otherwise they might get labeled as racist? This is Tim Walz trying to make it look like he did something where he didn't actually do anything. He's like the guy in that meme that goes around every so often with a kid who's standing in a yellow vest next to a subway, And then the subway pulls into the station. The kid makes it look like he's stopping the subway. And then he makes it look like he's opening the doors. And he makes it look like he's holding the doors open. And then he makes it look like he's pushing the subway down the tracks again. That's Tim Walz today. FBI Director Kash Patel wrote, in response to Walz, come again? This FBI and Department of Justice with our Department of Homeland Security partners drafted and executed every search warrant today. But go ahead and take credit for our work while we smoke out the fraud plaguing Minnesota under your governorship. Exactly right. Now, most of this was centered on the Somali population. But there were other groups involved in this as well. This isn't exclusive to the Somali population, except we've seen a lot of it in the Somali population. And who has the second biggest Somali population in the U.S.? Washington State. That's right, Washington State. Well, are the feds coming here next? Now, after the Nick Shirley video premiered, myself, Kristen Mag, Jonathan Cho, Cam Higbee, a bunch of people started looking into the fraud. And we found a lot of alleged fraud in the Somali community. But then it started branching out to other communities. And now that fraud is in vogue, these articles that people used to just ignore, these audits, these reports, these analysis that people used to just ignore we can't get enough of them. So when the state auditor comes out with a report, when King County auditor comes out with a report, when anybody comes out with a report, they're getting more and more attention. And now, reportedly, there is now a full-on investigation by King County into one of their employees who sent close to $1 million in grant money to 5 of her own family members over 5 years, and nobody did anything about it, even after they found out it was happening. Yesterday, we told you about Yolanda McGee, who managed liberation and healing from systemic racism, known as Liberated Village. She was fired in January for what the county called serious policy violations. The $10 million initiative was housed in the King County Department of Community and Human Services, which has already faced criticism over lax oversight of billions of dollars in grant spending. According to the Seattle Times, between 2022 and 2025, Liberated Village distributed more than $10 million through 19 contracts. During that period, money flowed to companies owned by McGee's daughter, 2 brothers, a cousin, and a sister-in-law. Now, the thing that upsets me about this is the Seattle Times finally realized they can get readership and clicks by covering fraud. Where have you guys been the last 20 years for Homeless Inc.? Well, whatever. Welcome to the party. I'm glad you did it. County officials reportedly first received a warning in 2020 when a former contractor employee emailed multiple county workers accusing McGee of glaring conflict of interest involving her daughter's work. No one followed up. Staff later told investigators the pandemic had made the department too chaotic to act. Oh, you had a lot of fraudulent checks to get out. I know. I'm sorry. Allegedly fraudulent. 3 years later, DCHS leaders independently discovered a contractor linked to McGee's daughter brought to the county ethics program. Officials concluded it was not a conflict, in part because McGee claimed she did not influence her daughter's hiring. A month later, managers found McGee had submitted $9,999 payment for one of her brothers, $1 below the threshold that typically triggers competitive bidding. It's like those scenes in the movies when some guy's coming across the border or he comes through the airport and he's only got, what is it? I think the maximum, you're not allowed, you have to declare it after it's $10,000 or something. And then the agent throws $1 on the pile and goes, see, now he's over. Now we can go after him. The payment was canceled, but officials did not reassign McGee's work or investigate it. So you knew something shady was going on. You canceled the payment and then you didn't investigate it. 3 contractors told investigators that McGee pressured them to hire or subcontract with her daughter's company. 2 contractors also alleged she pushed to remove 2 Latino consultants from the program because it was intended to uplift black and brown scholars, not the Latinos. And one claimed McGee said on a program call, they all look too white. So sounds to me, and by the way, this is the Seattle Times reporting this. This is the Seattle Times. I'm shocked by this. So what you're telling me is the black lady didn't like that the money was going to Latinos and thought the Latinos looked too white. And nobody wanted to fire the black lady for being a racist in 2020. That's what you're telling me about all this. So you let her steer. Steer is the word the Seattle Times is using. Steer close to $1 million to her own relatives. McGee denied pressuring anyone to hire her daughter and has disputed the county's characterization of events. She is contesting her firing through her labor union. Let me tell you something, my friends. Seattle Times don't run a story like this unless they've got you dead to rights. They don't. They really, really don't. The Seattle Times filed a public disclosure request to get all this information, which means they probably have the internal documentation of all of this. You know what I'm going to do? By the way, my friends, this is really easy to do. I'm going to file a public disclosure request to give me everything they gave the Seattle Times. Yeah, it's that easy. You ever want to verify something, that's all you got to do. Now I want to know what they found. I am so curious what's in there. The controversy also follows financial chaos at the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, where officials said roughly $13 million in public funds could not be accounted for. We found this out last week, right? They lost $13 million. I reached out to Reagan Dunn, by the way, who wrote an op-ed 3 years ago calling out the King County Regional Homeless Authority for gross mismanagement and financial impropriety. He was right. He was the only one calling it out. Rod Dumbrowski, dummy. That guy can try to take claim all he wants. He's been in office for what, 12 years now or something like that? He never did anything about it. Now he's like, we're not going to stand for fraud. No, do you know why now they're discussing shutting down the King County Regional Homeless Authority? I'll tell you why. They all want the money. Now, Reagan Dunn was doing it in advance. I'm talking about the other ones. They all say, wait, there's millions of dollars here, and we can get a piece of that. That's why. Number two, they want to shut it down. They want to close it down before any of their friends get indicted. They know that the Trump administration is on the hunt for this kind of stuff. They know that people in the media are checking it out. They know that if the Seattle Times is checking it out, there's an interest in this. The Seattle Times, which usually covers for all their insanity. In fact, the Seattle Times has been covering for the King County Regional Homeless Authority for its entire existence. Oh, yeah, sure. Every now and again, they'll write an op-ed or they'll write some article about something they did. But where are the calls to shut it down? They should have said, let's not do it. And then they endorse all the people who run the thing, despite their gross mismanagement. A separate audit cited a negative cash position of $44.7 million as of July 2025 and about $8 million in receivables that cannot be explained or reconciled. So you have all this fraud in King County. You have all this alleged fraud in Washington State. Do you think the feds are coming here next? Boy, I sure hope so. I really, really, really do hope so. Because I want them to investigate this, and it kills me all the time, and I say this all the time, that as a conservative, I am hoping for federal intervention. But that's what we need to do. We need to have somebody come check it out. King County Council right now is weighing whether or not the Inspector General is going to be tasked with finding fraud. Well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Given how much there is. From Como News, a January audit by the King County Auditor's Office found the Parks Department could not demonstrate whether millions of dollars in grant funding was used as intended, citing gaps in financial tracking and oversight. Okay, somebody answer this for me. What does the King County Council do exactly? You guys are supposed to oversee this stuff. What do? You just have meetings about controversial issues and you don't actually do anything. You all sit on committees. You all do stuff. So how come nobody was ever checking the finances of any organization, any government agency under your domain? That report followed a separate audit of the Department of Community and Human Services that identified potential fraud involving taxpayer-funded contracts tied to juvenile diversion and community programs. Auditors flagged unapproved payments, weak internal controls, raising concerns about how millions of dollars of public money were distributed. So, county lawmakers are now moving to respond. According to Como News, King County Councilmember Rod Dembowski is among 4 sponsors of legislation to create a county-wide inspector general, an independent watchdog with the authority to investigate fraud, waste, and abuse. Aren't there 9 members of the council? I'm pretty sure there's 9 of them. Why are only 4 sponsoring this? That's not even the majority. Why didn't everybody put their name on this sucker? The proposed office would be able to take complaints through a public hotline, subpoena records and testimony, and pursue contractors or grant recipients suspected of misusing funds. Why didn't you have this beforehand? And also, why did you guys not have regular audits? I had companies, I had accountants who did regular audits of what was going on. That's how we found out that one of my employees, for example, this guy was abusing a gas card, right? He's using it on days where he didn't have deliveries. Found that one out real fast. Or my favorite one of all time. Kevin will like this one. When we were doing the event rental business, I couldn't figure out why some of the bounce houses were coming back dirty on days they weren't rented. And it turns out one of my employees was loading up his truck with the extra bounce houses and knocking on doors that looked like they had kids there and renting them off the books while he was renting out the other ones.
That seems like quite a process.
It is, but he did it and he made good money doing it. And then he figured nobody would ever catch on to it. But I'm trying to figure out why I'm paying so much money for guys to clean these suckers. We figured it out inside of a month. Inside of a month, we figured it out. That's one guy.
How did you figure it out?
Because I kept trying to figure out, I'm like, why is that one dirty?
No, I know, but how did you catch him eventually?
How did I catch him eventually?
Yeah.
Because I was actually stuck a camera in the warehouse and I said, who's loading up the extra ones? It was as simple as that. It was really that simple. Oh, and one of the other guys goes, he did it with another guy on the delivery also.
See, I was going to say, it's probably something that one person couldn't do either. It's probably like, that's what I'm saying, is like loading those things up and trying to find a place where they'd want them. Like you're just randomly knocking on doors.
Well, no, think about this. When you rent them for 3 hours, you rent them for 6 hours, you rent them for whatever. So what this guy would do is he'd drop one off, and some of them you could do by yourself. I've done them by myself when I was in better shape. Some of them you could do, and this was a bigger guy. And he would just drive the block in the meantime. Just drive, asking people if they wanted them. He's like, hey, I got, like when those people come to your door, hey, we're landscaping down the street. We're roofing he was doing that. Industrious. Maybe if he had come to me and said, hey, Ari, we can make extra money doing this, I would have made him a partner. Instead, he did it off the books.
I've been around long enough to remember someone knocking on my door wanting to sell me steaks.
Steaks. Didn't we used to sling meat?
There was one of our stations used to, but that was even more above board. I'm talking about something like, I work for this butcher.
Yeah.
I got extra steak. You want some?
You want some meat?
No, thank you.
No.
Bouncy house?
Yeah.
No, thank you.
No, well, I would question that, by the way. Some random dude, I see you have children. Would you like a bouncy house? Sure, creepy giant man. Bring it to my backyard. I have questions about the people that rented from him. We figured that out inside of a month. Inside of a month. You're losing millions of dollars, billions of dollars in some cases. How do you not realize there's a problem? And why should we trust whatever inspector general you hire? Because you know that's going to be somebody's nephew or niece or friend or somebody who needs some 6-figure salary. You knew that's going to happen. Do I want accountability? Absolutely. But I think this should be an electable position. I don't think this should be somebody that they get to appoint. Otherwise, they're just going to appoint one of their buddies who gets to cover up more of their fraud. Let me know what you think. Do you think this inspector general for King County should be an elected position or an appointed position? And just before you guys weigh in on this, I'll remind you what happened when they switched the sheriff from elected to appointed. Let me know what you think. Give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Up next, my friends, looks like the Seattle Starbucks headquarters is about to become the largest spirit Halloween in the entire U.S. We'll tell you the updates I saw today with my own 2 eyes. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show.
Give me a
I had to run some errands this morning, so I took a different route to work, and I went through Georgetown and Soto to get to work. And as I was driving on First Avenue South, I was passing by the Starbucks corporate headquarters where we were broadcasting from last week. By the way, a lot of you seem to really enjoy that. We've been getting nonstop emails, calls, texts about that. So we'll look for other opportunities to do things like that. It was a lot of fun. But as I'm driving down First Avenue, I stop at the red light right over there at the Starbucks corporate headquarters. And what do I see on the corner? I see 4 rent signs from one of our local realtors right there on the corner. And it's right over where it says Starbucks Center. Now, mind you, I think that these signs are for the retail space down below because I went on their website and actually looked. I don't think they're for the actual office space yet because I did a little bit more digging. The building is not owned by Starbucks. They have a long-term lease that goes through 2038. It's owned by somebody else. So they got that sucker for a long time. What do you want to bet they're negotiating their exit right now? That would be my guess.
Are you saying that the building owners have a lease with Starbucks through 2038? Is that
yes.
the deal? Okay.
They have Starbucks has a lease on that building, or at least there was a news announcement about it when they signed it. I found that announcement. I haven't seen the lease itself, but I looked up the owners. I did a search for the owners and Starbucks, and I found the lease announcement that says it goes through 2038. One of our listeners actually sent me an email, and they were spot on about everything, but I got to verify and check all this. They actually sent us an email telling us all this.
Do you recall when we were down there? I didn't notice. Were those signs up for retail down there?
I didn't see them when we were down there. Otherwise, you know what I would have done? I would have. So Zach and I also turned the U-Haul and the KVI
through
van
the parking lot,
in the parking lot. We would have seen those because we came right out.
Right.
I would have seen those. And also, I'm a real estate guy. When I see for rent signs, I go, ooh, what's that? Let me check that out. So aside from the reason we were down there and everything else, those things would have set off my radar. Maybe I didn't see them. Maybe I was too busy following the truck. I don't remember seeing them.
I don't remember seeing them.
See? And now they're up. So let me just mention this for a second. Remember yesterday? We played the clip of Jake Chapman from Cairo 7 talking to Katie Wilson about this.
But this is a chance for us to ask you just your thoughts about it. And is there any concern about other businesses leaving?
Because this is a big Starbucks to Seattle. This is, again, not the subject of our press conference.
Yet when she finally answered.
So Starbucks expansion to Nashville has been in the works for years. Seattle will remain their North American HQ, and we're confident of that.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. It's not going to remain their North American HQ. You know what it's going to remain? They are trying to get out of that lease as fast as possible. Here's what they're going to offer. They're going to say, hey, landlord, can we buy out your lease? And the landlord's going to go, holy cow. No. They're going to say, well, here's the thing. We're moving out anyway. So can we work something out? What can we do to make this worth it? You want a bunch of cash right now? And if you find another tenant, believe me, I've been in these types of negotiations before. That is what is happening right now. But for the short term, you know what they can claim? That's our headquarters. Nobody works there, but that's our headquarters. They could sublease it to Spirit Halloween and have the biggest one in the U.S. right now, but it's still their headquarters. Spirit Halloween's using the headquarters right now for their once-a-year shop. They're using it, but it's our headquarters. That's what's going on right now. So what you're telling me, Katie Wilson, the day she wins the election, she heads down and protests against Starbucks. You're bad, you're evil. And at that point, Starbucks was looking at, well, maybe we should get out of here. I mean, the neighborhood ain't too good. You got the Home Depot right nearby, which people steal stuff from all the time. You've got a whole bunch of stores leaving around there. Kevin was telling me about restaurants that used to be down there that aren't down there anymore. You don't have as many employees there. Oh, he's about to chime in.
I will say that the restaurant that was gone was now replaced with another restaurant. So it wasn't
okay. So it wasn't that.
Yeah.
The way you made it sound was like they ain't here no more and there's nothing there anymore.
I was surprised because this was a person, I don't know how to put this. The restaurant that used to be down there was owned by somebody who used to, back in the day, be a listener to KVI and participate in a lot of KVI things and was known for this business and several others.
Yeah.
And I was shocked to find out that it was no longer down there and it quietly kind of went away 2 or 3 months ago.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do they have other locations?
They used to.
But they don't have any anymore.
I don't think so.
That's too bad.
I know.
Okay, that's too bad. Well, anywho, there wasn't much life down there, so I can understand why restaurants might decide it may not be the best place to make a go of it, especially when there's no more Starbucks employees down there. Let's be real. We have the retail is for rent down there because nobody else is taking over the retail that's down there. Even Amazon bailed on it. So let me walk this through for a second. Sears, Starbucks, Amazon all use that building, and now they're all leaving. Just making sure we got that right. So as soon as the millionaire tax is being proposed and going into effect, Starbucks goes, we're not putting up with this anymore. Howard Schultz gets out of here, and Starbucks says they're getting out of here and going to Nashville as well. Well done. Well done, everybody. Who's going to be left? Just the activists, the lunatic activists. Andrea Suarez, our friend from We Heart Seattle, posted this video the other day. She was out there helping homeless people, but apparently people don't like Andrea helping homeless people. That's the job of Homeless Inc. That's the job of radicals. That's the job of other people. So they slashed her tires.
We just got our tires slashed at the Ballard camp. We just came from there, pulled over, flat tire. There's definitely 3 gouges, and we were there doing outreach. How are you feeling emotionally? How distracting?
No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, because they were out there helping out people in the encampments, and somebody slashed their tires. That sounds to me like the activist class that thinks she's evil because she actually wants to get people into treatment, into housing, and back on the straight and narrow path and get jobs. How dare you? How dare you, Andrea? The only ones who are going to be left around here are going to be the activists. So I got this email. I am on the most random email lists. Are you ready for this? I got one from Mayday Strong. No, not the Bond girl. I got one from the activist group that is running the May Day protests. And they want to know if I want to interview them and if I want to be part of their planning session for the media. I actually did reach out for an interview. Shock, shock, I haven't heard back. Now, I don't know how I end up on these crazy lists, but I'm on it. Now, what I see on this list is a whole bunch of locations of where they're having these May Day protests, and already Madison, Wisconsin school district says they're not having school that day. Chicago teachers unions are saying they're not having school that day. Here's what I don't get. Why don't you just go protest after school? Why don't you call the protest for the evening rush hour? What time is school out these days in the public school? Maybe 3 at the latest. So you catch most of the working stiffs on their way home. You can go gum up traffic after school. Now you're canceling school. It is only a matter of time until other local school districts here in Washington say they're doing the exact same thing. We are doing everything for the activists to keep them happy and everything we possibly can do to chase away the businesses and the workers around here. But these May Day people claim they're all about workers' rights. No, they're really, really not. And this is the kind of thing that proves it. And just like the Democrats who are saying, oh, we never said all that stuff about President Trump, when we come back, not only do we have what they said before the assassination attempt, but now they're doubling down on the rhetoric. Guys, really read the room. We'll give you all details when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Normally, after there's something like an attempt on the president's life, everybody usually calms down for a couple days, dials back the rhetoric a little bit, tries to be a little bit nicer to each other. And shockingly, I've actually seen President Trump dialing it back a lot, which he doesn't normally do. That's not normally what he's known for. The Democrats, on the other hand, are doubling down. In fact, they're going full bore on this. And that's crazy, given the fact that we've seen the Shooter's Manifesto, and the Shooter's Manifesto sounds like it came out of MSNBC panels. It really is absolutely crazy with all the Epstein stuff and other brain rot that's on there. Well, yesterday, we played the clip for you of Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, reading all the quotes of the Democrats. Hakeem Jeffries, discount Barack Obama, what happens when you order Barack Obama on Temu, didn't like that very much.
Is that the so-called White House press secretary, who's a disgrace, she's a stone-cold liar, had the nerve to stand up there and read talking points being critical of statements all taken out of context that Democrats have made and didn't have a word to say.
What? Hang on. Taken out of context? All right, if I call Kevin a Nazi, which I would never do, how many ways are there to take that out of context? If I call Kevin a fascist, how many ways are there to take that out of context?
It could be that you were saying me and Kevin were playing Wolfenstein, Castle Wolfenstein, and Kevin chose to be a Nazi.
Wait, hang on. You could be the Nazis now?
I don't know.
I thought you just go kill the Nazis in Castle Wolfenstein. I thought that's how it goes.
I didn't play it enough.
Oh, no, here we go.
Maybe there's like a versus version.
I got you. Theater kid coming through. Here we go. Kevin and I were in The Sound of Music together, and we were Nazis in The Sound of Music.
There you go.
That's it right there, right? I ever tell you guys, we did The Sound of Music in high school and Jewish school. We did it in Hebrew. Okay, so first of all, you have Nazis speaking Hebrew, nuns speaking Hebrew, but also you got to be wearing these suckers on your head when you're doing the plays in the Jewish school. So you've got Nazis speaking Hebrew wearing yarmulkes and nuns in the full habits speaking the Hebrew. It was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. There are very embarrassing pictures of me doing that. Anyway, speaking of ridiculous, is Hakeem Jeffries' claims. It would be one thing if he goes, they were taken out of context and we would never say anything. The next day, they're doubling down. Here's J.B. Pritzker.
Some of your critics may point to what you said in the State of the State last year when you compared the Trump administration to the rise of Nazis. What would you say to that?
Well, Manu, remember what I was talking about was the fact that a constitutional republic was torn apart in 53 days in Germany in the 1930s, and that we need to watch out for that in this country. That is what I was talking about. And we've seen it, by the way, that speech was given in February of 25. I think over the last year, much of what I said has been proven to be true.
Wait a second. Am I taking that out of context? I let him explain his basis. He's saying it's like the rise of the Nazis. Maybe that was not clear enough. Here's Representative Dan Goldman.
We know what Donald Trump's rhetoric leads to because we know many times over how his followers use violence when they follow him. Now, that does not excuse rhetoric that would otherwise call for violence by anybody. The point is that we do need to dial it down on all sides.
So you need to dial it down, but it's Trump's fault. It's all Trump's fault. That's the direction you're going on with this? The most unhinged one was Ro Khanna.
Millions of people follow Hassan Piker. Why? Because he's speaking about some of the frustrations. He's speaking about the fact that people don't have health care in America. Well, there are a lot of people on the podcast world, et cetera, who say things that are outrageous or sensationalist, and I push back when you do that. But we have to understand the anger in this country of...
Oh, wait, hang on. Hassan Piker said America deserved 9/11. Hassan Piker was celebrating Hamas. And this is a guy who is out there fundraising for Democrats. And Ro Khanna's explanation for this guy is... Well, he has a lot of followers. So did Mao. So did Stalin. So did Hitler. Oh, but they've got a lot of followers. So did bin Laden, just as the Fox News anchor called him out on it. Really? That's your defense for all this? They've lost their minds. Absolutely lost their minds. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line. Take a call from my good friend, Alma. Alma, my darling, how are you today?
Oh, I'm fine, sweetheart. I am doing fine. I do want to say this. It was so good hearing King Charles talk. I listened to the whole thing. Yes, I called him King Charles. I had it off in the head. He was articulate. He spoke well. I mean, he said everything. He didn't try to divide. He was talking about united. And another thing, where was Trump today?
Well, hang on. Hang on 1 second, Alma. Hang on. Before we get into the Trump, I know you want to go there, okay? But you know the king has no power in England, right? He's basically just a glorified figurehead. I thought we were about no kings, Alma. I thought no kings.
Well, anybody can be my king, but Trump.
Wait a second.
Trump's a divider.
Wait a second, Alma. So you want a king. You want a king. You just don't want your king to be Trump. Do I make sure I got that right?
Well, that's true. But then if I'm going to have a king, I'm going to have a man king. It's going to be a man that's a man.
Oh, okay. Well, Alma, perhaps you missed the part this morning where President Trump and the king did the whole ceremony with the flags and the Trump was all over the place. In fact, they were both standing next to each other. They're joking. They had a whole speech. They had a whole ceremony before he went to Congress. They spent a lot of time together. Is that two kings in one place, Alma?
Well, he got too tired to do anything else. He had to go home. You know he can't. He's not in his right frame of mind.
Alma, did you think Joe Biden was in his right frame of mind?
Yes, he's very, very intelligent old man.
I was going to say young man. That guy ain't young, Alma. I think
what he's doing.
Okay. Alma, I appreciate the call. You must like the James Bond movies. You like the accent. That's what it is, right? You like the English accent?
No, I like the man who know what he's doing and do right. And
you know he's not a good guy. He cheated on Princess Diana and stuff, right?
Well, Trump cheated on everybody but all of them.
Appreciate the call. God bless you. Appreciate you being part of the show. God save the king, I guess. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. You know who's thanking God for his ratings boom right now is Jimmy Kimmel. When we come back, how Donald Trump and Melania going after this guy with a failing TV show actually is helping him out. I'll give you all the details about when the right gets it wrong when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Years ago, my mom told me, Ari, you are not allowed to watch Beverly Hills 90210. I didn't know what Beverly Hills 90210 was. I just knew the girls talked about it all the time. So what do you think the first thing I did was when I had the opportunity? I watched Beverly Hills 90210, and I said, this is a dumb show, and this is not made for me. No problem, Mom. I'm never going to watch Beverly Hills 90210.
When did you eventually see it? How old were you?
When did that come out? I was in middle school or something like that?
It came out when I was in middle school.
Okay, so I must have been younger than that when that show came out.
That's why it wasn't for you.
Okay. Well,
because they were handling things like drug use, teen sex and pregnancy.
Okay.
Things like that.
I had already seen like some Lethal Weapon and Die Hard and things like that at that age.
Yeah, but they weren't depicting people around your age doing these horrible, horrible things.
That must be it.
Young people should never do, even though everything inside of them is telling them to do it.
To do that. Okay. So I didn't like the 90210, so I watched one episode and I'm like, I'm done with this. Okay, Mom, no problem. No matter what you say. Not watching it. No problem.
I was a fan. I watched it from the very first pilot up until, I don't know, probably like when I was maybe like close to a sophomore in high school. Then I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. This is stupid.
You know, when I checked back in, you're going to laugh. I heard Kelly Kapowski was on 90210, and I'm like,
yeah,
Kelly Kapowski's in. I'm going to check. Oh, hey, she's looking pretty. She ain't no teenager, cheerleader anymore.
Yeah.
All right, well, I might stick around for this a little bit more.
A bad girl.
Yeah.
Because you were like, Kelly Kapowski is playing this.
What happened to you? And then you're hooking up with your cousin? What is happening in this show? See, I remember the 1 or 2 episodes I saw.
Tiffany Amber Thiessen.
There you go. Now she does cooking shows. Okay, so there's her. All right. My mom also said to me, Ari, I don't want you watching the show called Married with Children. And I said, okay, so what I do, I went and I'm like, this is the greatest show ever made. I need to watch every single episode. Okay, now let's apply that to now. The President of the United States says Jimmy Kimmel should be canceled. His wife says he should be fired. They all say that. What do you think happens to Jimmy Kimmel? Everybody tunes in to see what he's going to say next. I used to like Jimmy Kimmel when he was on The Man Show. His show sucks now because he wants to be a political pundit and he's not very funny anymore. Unfortunately, he's just trying to get the audience to applaud whatever nonsense he's doing. Last night, minding my own business, I'm covering an evening shift for the Post Millennial, and one of the editors says, hey, Ari, can you write this up? Here's the clips from Jimmy Kimmel. I go, you don't watch the show. You gave him the ratings because you wanted the clicks. You are literally doing what you're not supposed to be doing. And apparently a bunch of other people did it too, just to see what he would say. So Jimmy Kimmel, after saying this 2 days before the assassination.
Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
Horrible, terrible, but he probably wasn't making an assassination joke. He was probably making a Donald Trump is old joke. Regardless, not that funny, pretty tasteless. So both of them say after the assassination attempt, where they hadn't said anything beforehand, they say he should be fired. Well, then everybody tunes in to see what he was going to say, and this is just like what happened when he got suspended for the Charlie Kirk comments. He had record ratings for that first episode back, and then everybody stopped watching again because they realized this show sucks. So everybody tuned in to watch him say this.
I greeted the day facing yet another Twitter vomit storm and a call to fire me from our First Lady, Melania Trump, saying I should be fired because of a joke I made, again, 5 nights ago. It was a pretend roast. I said, our First Lady Melania is here. Look at her, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow, which obviously was a joke about their age difference and the look of joy we see on her face every time they're together. It was a very light roast joke about the fact that he's almost 80 and she's younger than I am. It was not, by any stretch of the definition, a call to assassination, and they know that. I've been very vocal for many years speaking out against gun violence in particular, but I understand that the First Lady had a stressful experience over the weekend, and probably every weekend is pretty stressful in that house. And also, I agree that hateful and violent rhetoric is something we should reject. I do, and I think a great place to start to dial that back would be to have a conversation with your husband about it, because
So forget the laughter for a second. Where's the funny? Bring on the funny. There's no actual funny in any of this. He's refusing to apologize, and now everybody's tuning in for it, and now everybody who's got my job are playing the clips and talking about Jimmy Kimmel. He's probably thrilled about this.
I am sorry that you and the president and everyone in that room on Saturday went through that. I really am. Just because no one got killed doesn't mean it wasn't traumatic and scary. And we should come together and be best. We really should. But if you want us to believe that a joke I made 3 days before this dinner had any effect on anything that happened, well, then maybe someone should look into this psychic lady, too.
This speech tonight will be classic Donald J. Trump. It'll be funny. It'll be entertaining. There will be some shots fired tonight in the room.
You know what?
Okay, so now everybody tuned in to watch that stupid and realizes it's not a good show, and he'll get a small ratings bump, and then he'll go back down, and he'll keep getting beaten by Gutfeld on Fox News every single night, which ticks him off. Now, what's crazy about this is a guy, here's what him and Jake Tapper were saying today, because Jake Tapper, of course, has to come to his defense.
New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers is facing intense and frankly well-deserved criticism over comments he made on ESPN's The Pat McAfee Show, in which Rodgers made false allegations about accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein and a popular late-night comedian.
A lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, are really hoping that doesn't.
False, defamatory, wildly irresponsible, and not funny if Rodgers was trying to be funny. This is child sex trafficking. I should note CNN has reached out to a representative for Rodgers and one for ESPN and one for ABC. They've all declined to comment. Frankly, just the latest example of Aaron Rodgers using his platform to spread misleading and false information. So wildly irresponsible. There are lunatics out there who believe this kind of stuff. Kimmel's right when he says he's putting his family at risk. What obligation does ESPN have to shut down this type of speculation? And by the way, I think Disney owns both ESPN and ABC, where Jimmy Kimmel is their late night star. Why is Disney even allowing this to happen? Would you be surprised if ESPN continues to let Rodgers on air after making this?
Okay. So that's how they feel about it. They're literally doing the same thing Trump was doing. Oh, we should take him off air. We should kick him off air in defending Jimmy Kimmel. So you're defending Jimmy Kimmel from being kicked off air by saying you should kick somebody else off air? I mean, come on, man. Let's not forget it wasn't too long ago that Tapper and Kimmel were saying how wrong it was to make fun of what happened to Paul Pelosi.
And it's not just the smears that they put out about Paul Pelosi, these deranged conspiracy theories. A lot of these folks, right-wing MAGA folks, tried to make jokes at Paul Pelosi's expense. Where's the line? I mean, I personally found those jokes by Don Jr. and others just horrible and not even remotely funny.
I've said a million stupid things, and I would hope that people would decide whether an apology is sincere. When an apology isn't even offered, listen, these people are supposed to be Christians. I am a Catholic. I grew up in the church. What I was taught was that if you do something wrong, you ask for forgiveness, and you are forgiven for these things. The idea that it would be anything other than that these people who are allegedly following the teachings of Jesus would behave in this way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Oh, hypocritical much? Yeah. The problem with Jimmy Kimmel is he's not funny. You can be mean if you're funny, apparently, but he also has no class. Just none whatsoever. I remember the kinds of guys who used to be on late night TV. Here's how they sounded.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure that all of you here and most of you watching tonight understand why we delayed this program for 24 hours. Because of the incredible events of yesterday, that old adage, the show must go on, seemed relatively unimportant. The Academy, ABC Television, and all of us connected with the show felt because of the uncertain outcome, as of this time yesterday, it would have been inappropriate to stage a celebration. But the news today is very good, as you know. The president is in excellent condition at last reports. He's been conducting business.
That's Johnny Carson hosting the Oscars in 1981 after Reagan got shot. Yeah, we don't have people like that anymore. Just don't. And he was a Democrat, by the way. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. Ferguson is suing Trump again. What for this time? We'll give you all details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, Bob Ferguson gets bored and decides it's been a while since he went after the Trump administration. But before we get to any of that, we go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line, take a call from Ted in Gig Harbor, who's been holding a while. Ted, what's going on, man?
Ari, that comment by, was it Jeffries that said that about Germany falling apart in 53 days in 1933?
That was Pritzker.
It was decades in the making. Hitler started in 1919. He was member number 7 of the NSDAP.
Yeah, he's not even historically accurate. We know. He's 100% wrong.
Not even close.
Yeah, but that's J.B. Pritzker. Anything you can to demonize Trump, to say, oh, it only happened in 50. No, it really didn't. I mean, let's not forget, the protests and the blood flag and all the other stuff. Hitler, Mein Kampf, in prison. I mean, this did not happen over 53 days. I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
They should read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William L. Shirer. Shirer was there from 34 to 40.
There you go.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting. He escaped in 1940. He took the last train out, and if you were taking stuff out, he said that it had to be stamped with an approved stamp by an SS officer, believe it or not. And he happened to know this officer, and the officer said, yeah, you bet, and stamped all of his notes so that he could come home and write his books.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy stories like that. There's a lot of stories that. Yeah. Well, Ted, appreciate the historical context, man. I understand why you're so fired up about this. I would be too, because, J.B. Pritzker just spews his nonsense. But for me, Hakeem Jeffries going after Caroline Leavitt, You're attacking a pregnant lady, dude. Really, you're going after her.
He's low class.
Right.
He's low class.
Now, mind you know what he could have done? He could have said, here's what President Trump said about Rob Reiner. Here's what President Trump said about Jimmy Carter. Here's what President Trump said. He could have done that. And all of us would have been like, well, yeah, I mean, he kind of did. Instead, he's going after Caroline Leavitt for quoting the Democrats. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Ted, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show? You give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Turd Ferguson is suffering from what I call Jay Inslee disease. Jay Inslee would, I don't know, it's like he went through withdrawal whenever he wasn't on camera for too long and he would need to call a press conference. Do you remember those idiot COVID press conferences? You gotta get vaccinated. If you don't, you're a bioreactor hazard to everybody around you. I didn't play the clip because somebody yesterday requested that we just get the Inslee impressions, not actually Inslee, because it's triggering, bringing him back. So I will try. Assuming I can avoid it, I will try. I will just do the impressions instead. So Turd Ferguson and Nick Brown, nobody's been talking about them for a while. It's been scandal, scandal, scandal. Fraud.
Turd Ferguson.
Exactly. There's turds everywhere. Dropping everywhere. Fraud, fraud, fraud. Anytime he posts, oh my God, the other day he posted something for Earth Day. It was the funniest thing. This is how you know how big Ari's army is. The other day he posted something for Earth Day. And apparently like the U.S. Geological people or something had something where you could find things on Earth that can spell letters, and you just like put in your name, it'll spell your name. So Turd Ferguson posts this. What's all the responses? Turd, spelled out with landmarks on Earth. In the comment section, I was dying. I was absolutely dying. That's just comment after comment and different landmarks every time. Turd, 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 turd. Oh, man, I can't imagine why he doesn't come on the show. Anyway, he's suffering from the Jay Inslee disease. So what does he do today? He announces, him and Nick Brown have a press conference, and they announced that they're going to take legal action against the GEO group, seeking a court order to force the private prison company to allow state health inspectors into the Northwest ICE Processing Center in Tacoma, because the two of them are believing everything the activists say. If the activists say abuse is going on there, they believe it. No matter what it is, that's what they're going to do. So just reading from his press release. A second here. Let's just go through this. They say they've been turned away 10 times, including twice since an appeals court affirmed the agency's authority to inspect the facility. Since 2024, 2 people have died while being detained at the Tacoma facility, and 6 more have attempted suicide. Well, do you have the rates of how often that happens in a regular prison? That's not an immigration one, because I hear it's pretty high. So, anywho, they have this big press conference. And of course, why are they doing this? Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. Since the start of President Donald Trump's second term, the number of immigrants detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has increased by 70%. I already voted for him. I can't vote for him again. I mean, I kind of want to. You don't need to convince me. Just last month, ICE reported that 46 people have died in their custody or at detention facilities they contract with since the start of the second Trump administration, the highest in 2 decades. Okay, are they criminals? Are they criminals? Because I don't really care. That may be cold-hearted of me, but let's see who's at the Tacoma ICE facility for a second here, shall we? All right, here we go. I'm just on ICE's social media account. ICE Seattle removed Marvin Escobar Ortega, 36, of Mexico. He has been arrested for, anybody want to guess? Do you want to guess? He's got a punched-in face. It looks like somebody punched in his face. Do you want to guess what it's for? Assault, reckless endangerment, child abuse in Baltimore, Maryland. And he has at least 4 illegal entries into the U.S. since 2020. Okay, all right. Let's see who else we got here. All right, April 22nd. ICE Seattle arrested convicted child molester and illegal Andre Guzman Aranda of Mexico. Was convicted in Washington of 3 counts of child molestation. Sentenced to 57 months in jail in 2023. Entered the U.S. illegally at an unknown date. Now awaiting removal to Mexico. Wow, got the real all-stars here, don't we? Here we go. ICE Seattle arrested convicted murderer Chu Kwan Sachao, 55 of Laos. 2 felony convictions in California, burglary and murder of his wife. Sentenced 25 years to life. He is being held at the facility until he is being sent back to Laos. Who else we got here? ICE Seattle arrested felon and illegal alien Luis Mendoza Zamora, 24 of Mexico. Felonies include 2 domestic violence, possession of firearm, attempting to elude police, all in Yakima County. Sentenced to 14 months in prison, being held until his eventual removal to, wait for it, Mexico. By the way, these are all on the same day. ICE Seattle has arrested illegal alien Rodolfo Barragan Mendoza of Mexico, has felony convictions in Yakima, Washington for protection order violation, assault in the 4th degree, domestic violence, crossed into the U.S. illegally multiple times. Do you get the gist? Do you get the gist of what's going on here? So, Bob, if you're so worried about humanitarian conditions, why have you never called for inspections, your health inspectors at Homeless Inc., at sanctioned homeless encampments? There is no way a sanctioned homeless encampment passes the smell test or any health inspection test. Ever. What about the tiny home villages? How about that? What about the RV encampments? How about that? You never call for inspections into any of those things, and you're spending millions upon millions of dollars. And in your most populous county, we found out $1.3 billion of that is unaccounted for. $12 million in the King County Regional Homeless Authority alone. $14 million. And you never call for inspections into any of that. You know what else you never call for inspections for? Male inmates who identify as female assaulting female prisoners. How come you're not looking into that? Your state is facing multiple lawsuits as a result of that, not looking into that. According to the Post-Millennial, the America First Policy Institute has filed a lawsuit against the Washington Department of Corrections and its head, Tim Lang, over the state's policy of housing self-described trans-identified men alongside females inside prisons. They allege that this has led to cases of violence and sexual abuse at the hands of these male inmates. We have documented 5 or 6 of them, I think on this show alone, 5 or 6 of them. We actually had one of them on the show to discuss this, I believe. We had one of their lawyers on the show to discuss this. We've been covering this for a very, very long time. What was Bob Ferguson before he was the governor of Washington? Oh, right. He was the attorney general. He wasn't looking into any of this. Not at all. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of Fair for All, Inc. and Washington Correction Center for Women inmate Faith Booner Smith. The lawsuit alleges that Booner Smith was violently attacked by a male inmate named Christopher Williams on August 7th, 2025 at the prison. I forgot about this guy. Quote, for apparently no reason known to Ms. Booner Smith, Williams approached her silently from behind, struck her in the side of her face with his fist, then grabbed her hair, threw her to the ground before kicking her repeatedly with such force that she sustained visible injuries, including facial bruising, a laceration on her mouth, and swelling to her jaw and eye. Williams stands at 6'4" and is biologically intact male, as well as a convicted child sex offender. It alleges that the Washington Department of Corrections has long been aware of the threat Williams and other male inmates pose to female inmates at this facility, saying that Williams has a history of violent, predatory behavior toward other female inmates that has led to multiple lawsuits from female inmates against the Department of Corrections. One such inmate, Mozzie Clark, I think we spoke to her lawyer a while ago, has filed 2 lawsuits against the Washington Department of Corrections in December of 2024, alleging that she has been sexually assaulted by Williams for months while she was forced to share a prison cell with him. AFPI said that Williams had been transferred to the women's prison despite the recommendation against such a move by Eric Jackson, superintendent of the male-only Monroe Correctional Complex, where Williams had previously been incarcerated. Jackson advised that Williams should not be transferred due to his serious infraction history and the most recent conviction where Williams assaulted and inflicted serious life-threatening injuries to a female victim. So, hang on, let me make sure I got this right. He was in the women's facility because, hey, if you're going to be in prison, at least find some women somewhere. That's what he was probably thinking. The child molester, violent guy that he is. So they send him to the women's prison. He assaults somebody. They send him back to the men's prison. Then they send him back to the women's prison because he identifies as female, even though he's still got his tackle and berries? The lawsuit states that despite these repeated acts of violence against female inmates, Washington Department of Corrections continues to house male inmates at the WCCW out of a confoundingly religious adherence to the transgender inmate policy. The result is an environment of threats, violence, and chaos in a state-maintained penitentiary established to house and rehabilitate female prisoners. The WDOC's transgender inmate policy stated, at any time, an individual may voluntarily submit DOC 02-420 preference requests to their case manager, designating their preferred name, pronoun, gender, to conduct searches and gender identity and to request gender-affirming state-issued garments and or placement in gender-affirming housing. Let's not forget that this state has spent $4.3 million that we know of on trans surgeries for male inmates in prisons. Trans surgeries for them. Never mind the money spent on laser hair removal surgery for trans inmates. Who are you trying to impress? Well, apparently the females. A form required to be filled out by the requesting inmate asks whether his placement in the women's prison would pose a potential risk to female inmates. Oh, let's see. Are you going to admit on the form that you pose a potential risk to other inmates? That's the biggest lie since I read all the terms and conditions before accepting them. Quote, but at the same time, the Washington Department of Corrections has no form or procedure to elicit the same information from female inmates who would have to share prison housing with the requesting male. Additionally, there is no similar policy or form for female inmates to request to be housed only with other females. So whatever the dude who thinks he's a girl is or just wants to be around the girls, he gets, but not the women themselves. AFPI stated that nothing in the policy even prohibits a male who is sexually attracted to females, let alone a male convicted of raping females, from ultimately sharing an unsupervised cell with a female inmate so long as he claims to identify as a woman. This is sick. This is twisted. They allege that a heterosexual male inmate may obtain transfer to a facility meant for females by self-identifying as a woman by simply checking a box on a form without any investigation by the Washington Department of Corrections or diligence into the genuineness of that inmate's claimed gender identity. Because there is no objective metric to evaluate a person's self-declared gender identity. Wait, what? You can't send them to the doctor and go, you're a dude. No, because we have to affirm everybody's stuff. Washington Department of Corrections staff must grant transfer requests based purely on the inmate's stated responses, however ingenuine. The lawsuit stated that placing men in women's prisons not only poses a risk to female inmates, but to the staff as well. Officers at female prisons, many of whom are female themselves, are typically trained for a lower risk population. With male inmates in the mix, they must suddenly manage inmates whose physical capabilities demand greater control measures, which can exceed the capability of the on-duty corrections officers. Oh, don't let practicality get in the way of your wokeness. In the case of Boer Smith, the only guard present in the room, a female, was dwarfed by the 6'5" Williams. The female corrections officer froze, screaming in fear for her safety, while Booner Swift was struck repeatedly. The lawsuit claims that the state's policy violates the 8th Amendment's protections on cruel and unusual punishment and the 14th Amendment's guarantee of equal protection. Chief Legal Affairs Officer at AFPI, Lee Ann O'Neill, yes, that's the one who we had, said in a statement, a woman's prison is supposed to protect women. Washington's policy turned that basic duty on its head. When the state knowingly forces women to live with men in inmate correctional settings, even after assaults, abuse allegations, and repeated warnings, it is violating the women's constitutional rights. I think I have to reach out to Lee Ann O'Neill again, have her back on the show, because I want to see how many clients she has and how many more she thinks are out there. How many people have come forward? Because in theory, every single woman in Washington State's Department of Corrections could be a plaintiff in this case. Every single one of them. And they all should be. Because why should they be subjected to this at all? Why? Because some dude who's a child molester or a child rapist or a regular rapist or somebody who's a murderer, a wife killer, just because they identify as female, they get to be sent to the female prison? That is insane. I've said for a long time, the only way Washington State is ever going to change some of its dumb policies is if it gets sued up the wazoo. Before the last legislative session, not the one that just happened, the one before that, we had Jamie Peterson on the show. You know why he told me they spend the money on the trans surgeries for inmates? I think we have a clip of this somewhere. I have to go dig it up. You know why he said they did that? Because they settled the lawsuit where they felt they had to do it. So, convenient excuse. Well, now you're getting sued because of your stupid affirming policies are putting women's lives at risk. I thought it was a left that's supposed to advocate for people in jail to get them out of jail or better treatment. Hey, where's Bob Ferguson on this one? Where's Nick Brown on this one? You guys are more than happy to go to bat for the illegal aliens who are in jail, but not the actual citizens of your state, not the women of your state, because that goes against your woke ideology. So you're not going to go to bat for them. Instead, you're going to go to bat for people like Javier Osorio Altamira, who has felony convictions in Oregon for unlawful use of a weapon, 3 pending counts of sexual abuse, and has been removed from the U.S. 3 times before entering illegally and will be removed again. How about in Seattle, who they arrested this guy here, convicted illegal alien Juan Silva Rodriguez of Mexico. Felonies for robbery, burglary, malicious mischief, and assault. Received a 12-month sentence as many misdemeanor convictions, all in Yakima. Since 2021, he's awaiting removal. That's who Bob Ferguson is advocating for. Bob Ferguson affirms, Nick Brown affirms the men who abuse women in female prisons. But he won't actually take care of the women who are having these issues in the prisons. What happened to believe all women, Bob? Where are you during all this? All right, it doesn't go in line with your woke agenda. Of course it doesn't. In fact, you know what else is? Lots of things are losing funding around here because of all his budget cuts. Well, now charter schools are losing funding, even though they have record enrollment better than the public schools. We'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. So you know how Bob Ferguson is cutting all these essential services? Why is he doing it? He's doing it because then he can blame Donald Trump, he can blame whoever else rather than his out-of-control spending. The parks, for example. You heard how this year a bunch of state parks aren't going to be opened? Oh, we don't have the $4 million. You're spending $4.3 million on the trans surgeries for the inmates. Why don't you just cut the trans surgeries for the inmates, no pun intended, and give it instead to the parks? They're picking the things with the greatest impact just to tick people off. So when they say, this is what we need the millionaire tax for, this is what we need the income tax for, this is what we need every other tax for, people actually believe them. This is what they're doing. They're doing it intentionally. Now, according to Como News, Washington's charter schools are grappling with the loss of millions of dollars after state lawmakers cut funding that advocates say pay for everything from counselors and nurses and special ed support. Did you cut it for the public schools? No, just the charter schools. They've been trying to kill the charter schools for years. Now they figured out how to do it. Let's do it with the power of the purse. The Washington State Charter School Commission, a state agency that oversees more than a dozen charter schools and their boards, estimate this will impact roughly 5,000 charter school students across 16 states. Well, you know they offer special ed in the public schools. So what they're going to say is, well, we have it over here at the public schools. Come on over to us. You don't need it in those charter schools. Then they get to put these kids on their books and get the funding for them. The executive director said he worries about the school's basic operations and student outcomes could suffer as funding is not caught up to traditional K-12 public schools. It was basically, oh, you want your charter schools? Isn't that nice? Isn't that sweet? Good luck funding them. Look, I know I've helped start a few schools here in Seattle. And one of the issues we always had was, how do you pay for the special ed? Sometimes you just can't accommodate a kid and then you lose that kid. It's very, very expensive. The executive director said he worries the school's basic operations are a problem. He says, quote, we serve traditionally more black and brown students. We serve schools that have amazing results, said Washington State Charter School Commission Executive Director Marcus Hardin told Como News, we're part of the public sector and should be treated as such because technically he's right. The charter schools are part of the public school system, but the Democrats don't want them charter schools because they always outperform the public schools. And in fact, you have people from the black and brown communities who are choosing the charter schools every time over the public schools. That's why he threw that line in there. That's literally why he threw that line in there. Try and say to the Democrats, you are demonizing the minority communities you claim to support. On his way to meet with staff at school sites, he said he believes there's a gloomy outlook for some school programming and staffing for the coming year. Quote, the state Charter School Association, a nonprofit and advocacy group, explained that state lawmakers this year cut the charter schools enrichment funding from the 2026 supplemental budget by $7.5 million. So they're funding health care for illegal aliens, but they won't fund the charter schools. They're funding the trans surgeries for inmates, for convicted felons, but they won't fund the parks. You see what's going on here? Quote, these funds are utilized in a way that are similar to how school districts use their levy funds that are oftentimes for core programming or core or essential staff. While the term enrichment is used to describe the funds, it's not really enrichment, it's basic education money. Schools like Puget Sound Elementary in Tukwila, Rainier Valley Leadership Academy in Seattle rely on getting $1,500 per student. That's it. By the way, we're blowing $20,000 per student minimum here in the public schools, and we have very little to show for it. The grades are getting worse all the time. The enrollment is going through the floor. Nothing's good over there, but the charter schools are doing more with less, and you guys couldn't even let them do that. So they said this will cut their literacy programs. They'll cut tutors to support special education. They're going to be cutting a whole bunch of this kind of stuff. Now, who pushed to cut the funding? Ready for this? Senator Lisa Wellman. She's the one who did it. She's the chair of early learning and K-12 education. Oh, Lisa Wellman's also the one who wanted to have that bill which would hide the information on all those allegedly fraudulent daycares. That's Lisa Wellman. So she says it's just about balancing the budget. Really? When are you going to start closing schools in the public school system? When are you going to start closing those? Because I know those cost a lot of money and you're keeping those open. When Seattle Public Schools, before the new superintendent, came to you and said, we need a bailout rather than closing schools, you gave them one. Rather than saying, no, fix your own finances, fix your own school. Instead, she's saying, we tried so hard. We tried so hard, but we just couldn't do it. We just couldn't do it. Yeah, you did this intentionally. You did this to try and sabotage. You did this to try and undermine the charter schools. This was intentional. Wellman noted additional budgetary changes to bus depreciation for Washington public school districts, funding for START program operations, and cuts to enrichment programs that help young children transition into kindergarten. So they're just cutting now she's trying to say, we made cuts to the public schools too. Give me a break. You guys should have said to the public schools, consolidate, start selling buildings, start making some money, rent out the buildings if you don't want to sell them. Rent them out to charter schools, rent them out to day schools, rent them out to private schools, rent them out to religious schools. We are not bailing you out again. Instead, they made the cut. Hey, guess what? If you have money coming in from rentals, then guess what? You don't need as much money from the government. Oh, I see the problem. I see the issue here. You just want the money from the government. Right. You don't want to get off that addiction that you guys have to the government money. This is how they are sabotaging the charter schools. This was absolutely intentional. Absolutely intentional. They could have cut spending in so many other categories. Last year they proposed hockey lessons for illegal aliens. Does anybody think that's a necessity? Do you need hockey lessons? I am sure if you called up the Kraken or the girls team, the Torrents, and said, hey, we want to do some stuff for the immigrant community, and they'll become lifelong Kraken and Torrent fans. Can you help them out? Absolutely. That's why they do it all the time. That's why they do it. But instead here, no, they didn't want to do that at all. It's just cut, because they saw a way to take out the charter schools. This is by design, just like with the parks. Notice the services that are getting cuts, the ones that are going to get covered by the news, the ones that people are going to complain about the most, so then they can justify the income tax, so they can justify whatever other taxes are there. And they're going to say, it's going to fund parks, it's going to fund charter schools. Those evil Republicans are trying to take it away. Brian Haywood trying to stop it. Donald Trump. They'll blame everybody except for their own out-of-control spending on stupid issues. Crazy and shameful. Absolutely shameful. Up next, there's actually a movement growing of mainstream, moderate, Democrats, centrists, who are pushing back on all this and are recruiting candidates to run against this insane agenda. We'll have all that information for you when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KBI. I said I would be recruiting candidates to run against every single person who pushed the income tax, and I wasn't the only one who had an idea like this. Because if they'll push an income tax on our state and they will tax everything on our state, there is nothing they won't do to our state, especially given the ridiculous things that they are funding. Well, a lot of people have picked up this challenge, picked up the gauntlet, and joining us now on the Warrior Injury Law studio line, friend of the show, Saul Spady, to tell us about his efforts in the same arena. Saul, how you doing today, man?
Ari, always great to join you. Always great to join members of the old rational opposition and hopefully new members of what I'm calling rational radicals looking to push problem solvers that are pro-economic growth and can defeat the Democrats in King County. Because Olympia, we think King County is the problem. We think the Seattle City Council is the problem. We have a lot of problems, Ari. But boy, the problem centers in Olympia in our state house and state senate. And you and I are on the same page, maybe different mantras. I think all the candidates I'm supporting are against the income tax as well. But there's a couple other issues that I think you'll enjoy talking about that poll really high in their districts that I think will lead to victory, because that's what we need. We need W's.
So tell me about the issues that are on for your slate of candidates. Tell me what are the high priorities for you guys.
Well, first, I want to talk about the candidates for a second, and hopefully we can get each and every one of them on your radio show, because I think you and I both know this, whether you're conservative talk radio, whether you're liberal talk radio, I think everybody's really frustrated with the cost of living and what I'm calling the quality of life crisis. And so the candidates that are ready to face that are Alex Andrade in the 33rd District, so that's Des Moines, that's Kent, Burien. Logan Evans is running as a Cascade Democrat, the first of his kind, and we'll get to that a little later, in the 47th District, and that's Auburn and Maple Valley. Mike Rosen is an independent running in the 41st, and then you got Jeff Kelly also running as a Cascade Party direct, not Cascade Democrat, in the House 38th. And, each of these candidates, I think, is focused on how do we lower taxes to lower the cost of living burden on the middle class and those most vulnerable. How do we get the addicts off the street? And for me, I very simply say it's 3 strikes. You go to 6 months of rehab. If you OD 3 times, and really if you OD once, we should be putting you into rehab. You can't leave, but we're pretty tolerant out here. And so if you OD 3 times, instead of, let's say, somebody who had 3 DUIs, we don't give you a new car or a new apartment and your dealer downstairs to murder you in 2 weeks with optional rehab. We give you some time and the treatment to work on it. And then the last one is pretty dead simple. It's something I wish our mayor in Seattle, Katie Wilson, would do. Bruce Harrell should have done it before. Really, Olympia should be putting this pressure. We've built this multi-billion-dollar light rail station. Goodness gracious, we might build some more multi-billion-dollar stops to West Seattle and Ballard, but we haven't zoned a single one of these light rails, Ari, and as a New Yorker, you should understand this, not one is zoned to 20 stories. And not like the entire city before everybody panics, but like 20 stories within 5 blocks of the light rail. Like, if no one's going to have cars, they got to live like that. Every other city in America has high density near their transit. We're the only one that doesn't. And in each of those issues, by the way, if you were listening, you're like, I kind of agree with 3 strikes, you go to 6 months of rehab, 20-story buildings within 5 blocks of the light rail, and cutting taxes and better spending our copious amounts of tax money that are very effective and being more efficient and finding the fraud. Those all fall above 70%.
So let's break them down each one, okay? I have my issues with upzoning, but I do not have an issue with upzoning transit. In fact, there were actually some fascinating studies I saw recently about what happens when you start upzoning single family and how it actually makes it more expensive. However, if you think about in South Seattle, along Martin Luther King Jr. Way, where the light rail goes right now, you're looking at just truck yards and other places like that, rundown auto shops, which if you upzone that area and you start allowing these 20-story structures, then guess what? You're going to have more people taking the light rail who won't be using cars. In fact, I saw an article, I think it was in Como News today, where they're talking about how they're finally opening more parking lots for the light rail. Well, that's how you get the last mile, which they say is a challenge all the time. I'm shocked it took this long. I've been talking about this from the beginning. This is a practical solution, and it seems like it's pulling really high, right?
Oh, polls super high. So 3 strikes, you go to 6 months of rehab, and King County polls at 77%. 20-story buildings within 5 blocks of light rail stations, polls at 70%. You'll love this one, Ari. Turnstiles, the idea that they do in San Francisco, where you have to tap to pay to go through a turnstile, polls at 63%. And what's really important, and I know we don't like talking about, what's the polling on Donald Trump in King County, but one of the reasons Democrats have been so lazy for so many years, and this is like a political consultant 101, is you find an issue that polls at 70% and you just go to town on it. And that's why every single person, whether Democrat, whether gay, lesbian, whatever their moniker, if they're within an inch of the right of a far left person, we immediately call them Trump, because as a consultant, we believe that leads to victory. Now, these issues all are more popular than Donald Trump is unpopular. And that's important because it helps cut through the crud, and it allows us to realize, and this is a big one, and you could be a Democrat listening, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me. You're a conservative listening, you 100% agree with me. We have elected politicians exclusively on are they like Trump, which makes no sense because no one can be like Trump. He's a very unique guy, and or not. And we have ignored every single issue. And Ari, your race, when you ran for Seattle City Council, got caught up in that. Every single race gets caught up in that. But you know what happens in 2028 when Trump is not on the ballot anymore? You can't do that anymore. And Democrats are going to be looking at their own Tea Party. And by the way, we are looking at the beginnings of the rebellion in front of us with Alex Andrade and Logan Evans and Mike Rose and all of these candidates, because all of us are frustrated with how we have taxed so much and produced so few results. And the answer isn't more taxes. The answer is what we need, the Quality of Life Coalition. We need to focus on the cost of living. We need to increase supply side housing, and we need to get the addicts off the street, because 10% of every business's revenue is going to private security. And I know I went all over the place, Ari, but these things make sense. These are rational solutions, and we got to get them done.
So let's break this down a little bit more. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Saul Spady, part of the Rational Opposition, the leader of the Rational Opposition, one of the people who got me on the radio. Saul is talking about this 3 strikes and you're out regarding drugs. 3 strikes and you go to rehab. My thing is that that's going to cost money. So playing devil's advocate for a second, how do you plan on paying for something like that? Is it just using the funds we have now that are being spent on Homeless Inc., or is it something else?
I think we need to go in and take a really hard look at the public housing dollars, which are in, I think, upwards of $500 million to maybe $1 billion in public housing investment funds, and start divvying that up for 2 specific things. One is for this first line of defense, i.e., if you have OD'd multiple times, again, that mindset, 3 DUIs, you don't get a free car. 3 ODs, you don't get a free apartment that you die in. Instead, you get 6 months of criminal justice rehab, maybe in a rural community with housing and a doctor. But then the way that we fund this is we refund all the public housing dollars, which, by the way, Ari, if you haven't done this story yet, you got to dive into it. The data, and Sarah Nelson had this data, so you can reach out to her, former Seattle City Council member. It shows that you have a higher chance of dying in Plymouth housing or in public housing if you're an addict than you do on the street. So
that's crazy.
The dollars that have been, isn't that a good article, Ari? Like, isn't that
I don't think I've
writing?
seen that one. Can you send that one to me, Saul?
Oh, it hasn't been written yet. It's data that I'll send you the person that has.
I hate to laugh because
Gary
it's tragic.
Glenn Ross data.
Yeah, that's crazy.
No, it's not. It's horrible. It's why we are taking this stand. It's why all of these candidates, Republican, Democrat, Independent, are rising up to deal with this, because we have wasted the tax dollars that are strangling our business community to build public housing that hasn't succeeded. And so what we need to do is we need to use some of that dollars to create this 6 months. You go to the 6 months of rehab that you get, and then the other amount should actually imitate what Microsoft did, investing in low and middle class housing. And it should be a public-private partnership where let's focus in on that 5-block area around the light rail, specifically MLK. We want to get stuff up quickly. If a developer will agree to build a 20-story building, we'll give them fast permits. Maybe we encourage them to imitate Amazon with the Mary's Place regrade, and they donate 3 stories of housing to like a Mary's Place. and then they do low-cost bottom-floor retail, we can fix Mom Donnie's problem, and they can offer low-cost rent to grocery stores and people who offer childcare, so we can approach it from a supply-side way and lower their costs. And I think a developer might take that if we, let's say, cover the 20% down payment they need as part of this private-public partnership. And by the way, they have to pay property taxes because that's the problem with these public housing buildings. They don't pay property taxes. So I know they're kind of disconnected issues, but I think we can take this really focused approach of using the dollars that are being dreadfully wasted right now that are hurting the business community and instead trying to open up supply, get buildings built for people who are sober, for students, for your kids that can't afford to live here anymore and are moving out, instead of for the addicts that seem to die in the buildings we are building.
Saul Spady, if people want to learn more about this movement, if they want to be part of it, if they want to support it, if they want to volunteer for you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You got to go to the candidates at this point. I mean, you can follow me and I'll connect you with the right candidates. And it's Saul Spady on Instagram. We're going back to what we did with the head tax, Ari. I'm approaching this from a social media, grassroots, knock on doors, get signatures. You may or may not believe me, but I've been doing this for almost a decade, and I have a multi-year plan that builds into 2028 and beyond. And we are in this together. Not one moment have I tried to make this about Republican or Democrat. This is about Washingtonians and the issues that are driving us to consider leaving our state. And, we can't move Dick's drive-ins, right? I'm not moving from the state for my entire life. I've made a commitment to live here, made a commitment to cry for the Mariners every year the way you cry for the Mets, Ari. And, one of us is going to win a World Series first, but we'll see which city we fix before the other. Mom Donnie gives us a little bit of a head start, right?
Yes, absolutely, because now he's taxing the owners of my team. Saul Spady, leader of the Rational Opposition. We will make sure to have those candidates on the show so you can learn more about them. Really appreciate you joining us today, buddy. Good to hear from you again.
Oh, always great to connect with you, Ari. We're reaching the tipping point. People don't believe it, but we're closer to our revolution as Washingtonians than we think.
From your mouth to God's ears, my friends. Always a pleasure having you on. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder to download the KVI app and, of course, subscribe to our podcast on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. That way you never miss a minute of the show. You can also check out our brand new articles over at kvi.com. I got a couple that went up today that we aren't doing on the show until tomorrow. So if you want to see what some of that news is, head on over to kvi.com. Don't forget, you can also stream the show over there. A lot of reaction to our last guest. El Darthbo prays for Saul Spady and his plan to return sanity to the social problems that have been inflicted on the good citizens of our beautiful state. This one from the 206 says getting the Spady family involved is fantastic. Yes, of course. Everybody loves Dick Strivin. But also they help get the charter schools done around here, and they help many other things. They help repeal the head tax. So yes, absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. This one here from Forrest Cat. Ari, it's outrageous to be told there isn't enough funding for all Washington state parks. The first ever day use fees began in 2002 at $2 to $7. Last year, annual parking permit was $30. This year, I paid $45 for the annual parking pass. Let's not forget, they doubled the fees of the Discovery passes. This one here, Larry Magnolia, says Turd likes taxing like King George. No, it's King Charles. King Charles, who's in town today, not King George. By the way, it's King Charles the 111th, right? Oh, wait, those are Roman numerals. It's a 3. Did you see that old clip of Ilhan Omar surfaced yesterday where she saw World War XI instead of World War II? I did like the meme I saw going around where it's her walking out of The Godfather Part 2 and says she really didn't like The Godfather Part 11. That was great. That was really good. You know, it's not great, by the way. I go to the gas station this morning. So I'm driving the brand new Dodge Charger 6-pack that my friends over at Renton Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram got me. It's got an inline 6 in it, so it uses a lot less gas than my V8. And I'm driving the sucker around, and I need to get gas today. I pull into the gas station. It was $6 a gallon after tax. $6 a gallon in Seattle. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. And I know a lot of people want to point at the war, and yes, there is a part of the war that is responsible for this, absolutely. But let's not forget that between $1.30 and $1.50 that you are paying at the pump right now is because of the taxes here. 55 cents alone for the Climate Commitment Act, which does absolutely nothing to help the climate. Nothing. It just gives money to radical activists. So now a lot of people are saying, can there be some kind of tax holiday? Nope. Bob Ferguson ain't going to do it. Hey, we got another increase in the road tax for gas that's coming up in July. Can they pause that for a minute? Nope, not going to do it. Their goal is to be the most expensive gas prices in the entire U.S. They're trying to get you out of your car. And if not, they're going to take every dollar you have in order to continue paying for their crazy policies. That's what they're going to keep doing. It's nuts. It's absolutely crazy. Now, meanwhile, Lee Zeldin, who's head of the EPA, was up on Capitol Hill the other day. He's up on Hill going head-to-head with Representative Rosa DeLauro. You remember her? Of course you do. You may not know her, but you know what she looks like. She's the one who's the old lady with the purple hair and the glasses that make her look like the gal from The Incredibles. No capes. She's not as cool, though. That's her. So what happens is her and Lee Zeldin are going head-to-head, and she proves how little she knows about the environment. And Lee Zeldin is just taking her down piece by piece by piece. He's the one who's saying, yeah, your arguments make no sense because you don't know about this court case. You don't know about that court case. You are just stuck with your own radical agenda. Because that's what Democrats know. They know the radical agenda. They don't actually know the law. Lee Zeldin was a lawyer, is a lawyer, still acts as one. And actually, he's the one who's pushing back on all this and calling out the Democrats on their own insanity. But now a growing movement here in Washington is also calling for the Democrats to roll back a lot of those taxes. So when we come back, my friends, the awesome audio of Lee Zeldin taking on this crazy, kooky congresswoman, but also the Republicans locally who are in our area who are saying, why can't we have a gas tax holiday? You just did it with the diapers. You just did it with a whole bunch of other stuff. Why can't we have that? Plus, what's going on with the war? We going to get that straight open anytime soon? We'll tell you what's going on when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show's final hour free for all. Your calls, your texts, your thoughts, your stories, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, I didn't see any No Kings protesters in D.C. today, and from what I heard, there was a king there. But before we get to any of that, I promised you the awesome audio of Lee Zeldin, head of the EPA, going head-to-head with Representative Rosa DeLauro. Rosa DeLauro, she's the one who has the purple hair, but she is way too old to be having purple hair, so she's just one of the radical activists or Starbucks baristas who grew up. She's got the glasses like Edna Mode from The Incredibles. And she's a bit of a crazy person, but she clearly doesn't know what she's talking about. So you had Lee Zeldin, head of the EPA, going head-to-head with her, and it's delicious, my friends, because when you have a lawyer who knows the law going head-to-head with a moron who looks like an aging Batman villain, you get this.
When climate change is flooding our streets, poisoning our air, driving up healthcare and disaster costs, how can the EPA justify abandoning that duty to protect Americans to appease polluters under the false flag of economic growth?
Following the law, Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, where does it say anything about fighting global climate change? Loper Bright, Supreme Court case, you familiar with it?
No, I maybe others are not, but let me ask.
But that's really important. As a member of Congress, Loper Bright says that we as an agency don't have the authority to get creative if Section 202 of the Clean Air Act.
No, but you don't have, excuse me.
Stop right there for a second. Stop right there. So wait a second. He's saying, here's what we have the authority to do. Here's what we don't have the authority to do. You want us to do something we don't have the authority to do. You're a member of Congress. If you want to do it, give us the authority to do it, and we'll do something about it. But we don't actually have the authority to do it. So all you're doing is grandstanding, you Looney Tune.
You do not have the right to say climate change does not exist, that it's a hoax, and that's where this administration is coming from.
I understand you're upset that you don't know what Loper Bright is. Do you know what the major policies doctrine is?
I'm upset because
you know what the major policies doctrine is?
You know what, let me just
you're a member of Congress. You should know.
Well, you have moved from someone who defended the environment to all of a sudden
being very defensive about not knowing the two biggest landmark Supreme Court cases of the last year.
You are very defensive about changing your policy and your positions with regard to the environment.
Okay.
Now, you just tell
me. Do you want me to tell you what the two biggest Supreme Court cases are of the last few years?
This is what I want you
Michigan
to tell
versus
me.
EPA.
Whoa.
West Virginia versus EPA.
You know, you're here because you need money from us. So halt for the second and wait for the questions and answer the question.
Well, I answered your question,
and you
didn't like my answer because you don't know what Loper Bright is, because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is, because you're asking me about Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, and you don't read it. You don't know what it says.
Listen, and what you want to do is to deny.
No, I actually read the law. I do my homework.
Really?
You're just somebody who likes to have the microphone on. You know what I have to do? I read the law. I read the Supreme Court cases.
And I would say
what you should do for your constituents is actually read statute.
The budget is at real risk.
Read your Supreme Court.
This is the Appropriations Committee.
Oh, you care about science? Now you're threatening to defund it?
Oh my God! No, you don't fund
because you don't know what Loper Bright is. Because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is. Your message to our folks at the EPA is that you want to defund us.
I don't have to listen to this BS.
So, hang on. I want to make sure I got this right. You say you want the EPA to do something. The EPA does not have the authority to do something. The law, the Supreme Court has ruled the EPA does not have the authority to do something. You want them to do it anyway, and then you're yelling at the chairman for telling you the law, which clearly she never read or she's so old she forgot. Lee Zeldin posted on Twitter after this exchange with a copy of the video. It's got 8.3 million views right now, by the way. Nothing infuriates an uninformed congressional Democrat more than when they realize they voluntarily triggered a debate with someone who actually knows what they are talking about, reads federal statutes, and adheres to Supreme Court precedent. Today's self-implosion by Representative Rosa DeLauro was quite remarkable to witness. Without apology or regret, I will always adhere to the best available reading of federal statute pursuant to the U.S. Supreme Court decision in the Loper Bright decision, which is basically saying, no, you don't have the authority to do these kind of things. Here's what you do have the authority to do. Man, wish that guy was governor of New York. I truly believe that Lee Zeldin would have won the election to be governor of New York instead of Kathy Hochul if 500,000 people hadn't moved to Florida during COVID, because don't forget that's about the margin he lost by. I think it was closer to 400,000. But think about the amount of people who moved because of that. Now, mind you, local Republicans are actually calling to offset the cost of the gas tax by actually taking a gas tax holiday. And Bob Ferguson isn't going for this at all.
Well, you've likely paid more for gas over the past couple of months than you may have expected. This afternoon, AAA reporting the average price in Washington is sitting at about $5.39. Part of the high prices comes from the state's gas tax, but could that be paused or maybe lifted? Drew Andre from our Seattle station sat down with a lawmaker in Olympia to give us all a better idea.
As we creep closer to July, there will be a 2% increase on the 55-cent gas tax. And every year after that, there will be another 2% increase. And Washington state already has the third highest gas tax in the country, and it's not likely that's going to change anytime soon.
All 50 states have a gas tax. 2, Georgia and Indiana, have paused theirs. And Utah begins a gas tax holiday in July. The goal, ease the pressure on drivers during this surge in prices. But don't expect Washington state to follow.
Why is it unlikely that that would happen?
Well, it's unlikely because the gas tax is integral to the budget that we just passed here again. That keeps our transportation system moving.
The gas tax is Washington's single biggest transportation funding source. Road repairs and projects wouldn't be completed without it. Skyrocketing construction costs and more drivers switching to electric vehicles who don't pay into that gas tax are already straining the state's ability to fund projects.
You could offset the gas tax, some of that, with Climate Commitment Act money, because that fund generates billions of dollars.
That's the idea from Andrew Barkis, the ranking Republican on the House Transportation Committee. But it hasn't gained much traction in Olympia. As a business owner himself, Barkis says his company is already feeling the pinch and worries those costs will be passed on to customers.
It is having an impact. We're having to kind of watch how we plan our routes and everything else.
Because the gas tax is a fixed amount, the state isn't collecting any extra revenue from those sky-high prices at the pump. Barkis says if tensions overseas don't ease, the state will face some tough decisions.
If we don't see that changing anytime soon in the Middle East, then we should be making some decisions as we roll into the summer months.
Governor Bob Ferguson could call the legislature back for a special session this summer, but at this point, that seems unlikely. Reporting in Seattle, I'm Drew Andre, King 5 News.
You think Bob Ferguson would ever call a special session to reduce taxes? I could see him calling a special session to increase taxes, but not to decrease taxes. Bob Ferguson never met a tax he didn't like. Right now, he passed an unconstitutional and signed an unconstitutional income tax. There's no way he's going to lower a tax in any way, shape, or form. Just not going to happen. So earlier today, I did an interview with Stacey Washington from Stacey on the Right. Her show you can hear over on Satellite XM. You can hear it on the Patriot station. And we talk about once a month. She has me on for a long-form interview, and it's actually going to be running on Friday. And one of the questions she asked me, she said, Ari, if you had 30 minutes with the president right now, what would you advise him to do? What would you ask him to do? And I said, I don't think I would advise him anyway. I'd want to have a conversation about what can be done about the economy and gas prices specifically. Because he has lots of advisors. He's got great, brilliant people like Lee Zeldin. But here's what I want to understand. Supply and demand. I went to business school. I understand it. A lot of people are saying, why are we paying these prices if we are not reliant on the Middle East for gas? Well, there's a lot of things that affect gas prices. One of those things is futures. How much do you think it's going to cost in the future? If people think that the Iranians are still running the Strait of Hormuz, then they can do this anytime they want. And if they can do this anytime they want, you're going to have this happen in the future. So if we don't finish the job in Iran with the Ayatollah's regime, what's left of it, then we're going to keep having this problem just like we've had for the past 5 decades. We're going to continue having this problem. You need to solve that. Here's another thing. Why don't we become the world's gas station? Well, also, you have ships going a farther distance to get their gas from us. You don't really want to go all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to get your gas from us for Europe or whatever the case may be. You want to get it closer to home. But you have something else here. Let's say you ramp up production, and then the war's over tomorrow. Now you got a problem because you hired a bunch of people, you built a bunch of infrastructure, and now you don't have customers for it. There is a balance between how much infrastructure you have, how many employees you have, gas prices, you name it, where you don't make money anymore or there's a crash. Here's what I can compare it to. Remember Zoom ramped up hiring during COVID because everybody was using Zoom? And Zoom was hiring and hiring and hiring and hiring and expanding and expanding. And then what happened? COVID's over and people go back to in-person meetings and you don't need the Zoom anymore. Well, then Zoom had to be doing all these layoffs. Amazon had something similar. They were hiring and hiring and hiring and hiring because everybody's ordering everything. Everybody's home all day. All you're doing is ordering on Amazon. And then it drops off and you have to lay a bunch of people off. That's what you don't want to happen in the gas industry. That's part of the problem too. Most people are anticipating a short-term solution for this. Look, even if the war is over in 4, 5, 6 months, then it's still a short-term solution, but that may be too long-term for a lot of people. I would want to weigh the pros and cons of all this with President Trump if I had an audience of 30 minutes with him to discuss all of this, especially as it pertains to the upcoming midterm elections. Because here's the problem you have. If you don't have the economy under control soon enough, then what happens is you go into the midterms and you have given the Democrats their talking points. All they have to do is bash the war, bash the gas prices, and the average American who gets their news from their phone while sitting on the toilet in the morning just from the headlines, they're not actually reading the articles, will say, yeah, things are expensive. They're not going to know the Democrats jacked gas prices by cutting off oil production. They're not going to know they jacked prices and inflation by spending it on ridiculous climate stuff. Instead, they're just going to say, well, it's not great under the Republicans. Let's go vote for the Democrats. That's what's going to happen. So how do you turn all this around? Right now, we know that the negotiations have not been going great with Iran. Iran apparently is saying that now their economy is on the brink of collapse. If you want my opinion, I think it's already collapsed. And they sent their terms for a long-term ceasefire, their terms for a peace deal to President Trump, which President Trump said no deal because it still includes that they can enrich uranium. It still includes that they control the Strait of Hormuz. It still includes everything. So how about no? That's what we say for that one. We're not going to do it. So that means you got to finish the job. The other day, on Friday, I believe it was, somebody sent me a video from Ben Gurion Airport. We spoke about this on Friday. Ben Gurion Airport is where all the passenger planes fly in and out of Israel. But the U.S. has been using it for staging. It's tanker after tanker after tanker after tanker after tanker. If you need that many tankers, and they're all U.S. tankers, they're for U.S. fighters. That's why you have the U.S. tankers there, which means we are gearing up for the next stage of this thing, and it has to be over. It has to be over. It has to be done right. It has to be done quick. Now, I'm thinking of the golden triangle of contracting. You guys know this one? Anybody who's ever done work in their house knows the golden triangle of contracting. Imagine a triangle, and each corner has one of the words I'm about to give you. One says good, one says fast, one says cheap. You get 2 of the 3. You don't get all of them. If it's good and fast, ain't going to be cheap. If it's cheap and good, it ain't going to be fast. If it's fast and good, ain't going to be cheap. You get the idea. That's basically what happens there. And you have this here as well. Do you want a long-term solution for this? Doesn't mean it's going to be quick. Do you want a good solution for this? Doesn't mean it's going to be quick. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. But that's the exact same thing. And here's something else to think about. And actually, one of you on the text line beat me to it. This from the 206. The first time Democrats get control, the American gas station will be put out of business. Exactly. Because they'll do what Biden did, where they'll cancel all this drilling, cancel all these leases, cancel all these pipelines. That's exactly what Joe Biden did that got us into this mess in the first place. So now that you know all this, that's the conversation I want to have with President Trump. You have to factor in economics. You have to factor in politics. Because there's a lot of people who just go, okay, well, if we're talking about tax holidays, what about the tariffs? Tariffs are taxes. What about a holiday for those? Would you be in favor of those? Would you be in favor of a gas holiday? Let me know what you would want to talk to the president about. Give us a call or a text. at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. John in Lakewood says, Ari, we can't have a gas tax holiday because the unaccounted for Climate Commitment Act grift revenue brings in too much money. And Olympia would never give a damn about our costs as the CCA tax compounds every other tax it affects, such as sales tax and others. Well, it doesn't entirely work that way, John, but I hear your point, is that it just makes things worse. It just makes things worse. And also, when you have to pay more money in gas, that means whatever else you are buying makes things worse. And yes, to your point, if you're paying more for the gas, sales tax, other things are going to go up as well. So this is all a problem. This is all a huge problem. And Republicans got to get it under control. They got to get it under control. And I believe we should finish the war. I believe we started it. Well, actually, I don't think we started it. I think Iran started it 47 years ago. But we need to finish it. And we need to finish it decisively. Limping off the battlefield with a half victory, the kind of stuff that Joe Kent keeps advocating for, is not going to get this job done. It just ain't going to do it. And here's the other thing. Our allies need to step up as well. It's their oil. It's their gas. Now, mind you, the king of the UK, the king of England, doesn't have a lot of power in England. It doesn't really work that way. But he was in Washington, D.C. today, so I kind of wonder what the conversation was about. Because he was talking about climate nonsense. I love all the Democrats standing up and applauding for him. The ones who 5 minutes ago were no kings, no kings, no kings. Now they're all applauding the King of England. When we come back, my friends, what did Trump and the King actually talk about? Is the UK going to step up? And what's going on with OPEC? Is that going to affect our gas prices as well? We'll give you all details when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, my friends, our video is back up and running. So if you want to see this beautiful face and this receding hairline, head on over to Rumble, Facebook, X, and of course, YouTube. You can actually watch the show over there, see me in studio, and track my weight loss and call me out for the fact that it's not going well, but I am working on it. I'm trying my very, very best, but the food is just so delicious. It's so good. Those carbs, they taste so good. I'm trying. It's not easy.
You need to stop fat shaming yourself.
Yes. Do I?
Yeah.
Do I just need to get on a treadmill and just do that? Because the problem is my knees are killing me. That's the problem, man. It's just whatever. It's not working out well.
I probably weigh more than you do, and somehow I'm
You're
still
also
able to
taller
throw
than me,
kicks
man.
and all sorts of stuff, dude.
You also kickbox and stuff, don't
What
you?
I'm saying, my knees are holding up with that. What's your problem?
Yeah, I don't use them, so they're just carrying around my fat you-know-what. That's the problem that's going on here. I got to do something real about this if I'm going to address this. Speaking of addressing people, the King of England, King Charles the 111th, according to Ilhan Omar, King Charles the 3rd, was in town today. And it's a very odd way to start America at 250, but President Trump explained exactly why he did this.
Here in the shadows of monuments to George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, honoring the British King might seem an ironic beginning to our celebration of 250 years of American independence, but in fact, no tribute could be more appropriate. Long before Americans had a nation or a constitution, we first had a culture, a character, and a creed. Before we ever proclaimed our independence, Americans carried within us the rarest of gifts, moral courage, and it came from a small but mighty kingdom from across the sea. For nearly 2 centuries before the Revolution, this land was settled and forged by men, women who bore in their souls the blood and noble spirit of the British. Here on a wild and untamed continent, they set loose the ancient English love of liberty and the Great Britain's distinctive sense of glory, destiny, and pride. And that's what it is, glory, destiny, and pride. The American patriots who pledged their lives to independence in 1776 were the heirs to this majestic inheritance. Their veins ran with Anglo-Saxon courage, their hearts beat with an English faith in standing firm for what is right, good, and true. In recent years, we've often heard it said that America is merely an idea, but the cause of freedom did not simply appear as an intellectual invention of 1776. The American founding was the culmination of hundreds of years of thought, struggle, sweat, blood, and sacrifice on both sides of the Atlantic. Fate drew a long arc from the meadow at Runnymede to the streets of Philadelphia that ran through the lives of people born and bred on the British code that no man should be denied either justice or right. American patriots today can sing, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty," only because our colonial ancestors first sang, "God save the King."
That's really poetic. That's really sweet. That's really polite. Far be it for me to disagree with our president, but guess what? I'm going to disagree with our president. That is the nicest whitewashing of history I have ever heard, because you know what I would ask in response to that? If things were so good, why do we have a revolution? If we like that English spirit so much, why do we have a revolution? If we had justice and all these other great things, why do we have a revolution? If living under the king's rule was so wonderful, why do we have a revolution? Okay, so it's nice you be complimentary to your guest. That's a little bit too much polishing the apple or kissing something, but that's what Trump does. That's what Trump does. Really poetic, very sweet, very nice, but yeah, that's a take on history. That's an interesting take on history. Not so big on, if I'm going to be honest with you. Or you can look at it the other way. You could say, see all this stuff here? Thanks for giving us, a few people, because look what we built with it, and you guys are being overrun by terrorists right now. Could go that route. We like to thank the British for everything, including losing that war to us and all that oppression that inspired that American ingenuity. Then he got into a little bit more modern history.
But beneath those beautiful flags 8 decades ago, Prime Minister Winston Churchill and President Franklin Roosevelt famously met on a ship in the North Atlantic to outline a vision for the free world after World War II. That understanding of our nation's unique bond and role in history is the essence of our special relationship, and we hope it will always remain that way. The ship where the two great leaders met was called the Prince of Wales, the very title that His Majesty the King held longer than any other individual in British history, and he held it with great pride and respect. It's said that when Prime Minister Churchill first met this future king many decades ago, he was so impressed, he made the statement, "He is so young to think so much and so well." And the bust of your great Prime Minister rests proudly again in the Oval Office. We're very proud to bring it back. We brought it back. Throughout His Majesty's life, the world has witnessed that same thoughtfulness which first struck Britain's greatest Prime Minister. His Majesty's intellect, passion, and devotion have been a blessing to the British people, but not only to his own country, but to the cherished bond between the United States and the United Kingdom. And I am very certain that it will continue that way long into the future.
He really can lay it on thick when he wants to, can't he? So, you know what I love today? All the people on the Democrat side of the aisle who are like, no kings, no kings, no kings. They're all standing up and clapping like trained seals when the King of England, the actual King of England, walks into the room. And then they're all talking about how wonderful this guy is, how nice this guy is. Look how well-spoken he is. Look how polite he is. Look how respectful he is. You do know this was the guy who cheated on Princess Diana, right? We all know who Camilla is. We all remember all this, right? We're just kind of whitewashing the history a little bit here. That's what we're doing today. But no kings, no kings, no kings, right? Oh, so much more graceful than Trump. Oh, he's such a good guy. Have you not watched The Crown? Do you not know any of this? Just watch the movie, watch the show. We all know this kind of stuff. Unbelievable. But here's something you should think about. Why he was mentioning Roosevelt and Churchill. Because basically, the U.S. and the U.K. won World War II. Yeah, we liberated a bunch of other countries. Yeah, we had some help from the Canadians and a few others. But really, the U.S. and the U.K. won World War II. And we needed our allies' help, and they needed our help. Well, now we're asking for help again. We're asking for Europe to come get their own oil, to protect their own trade routes, their own oil supplies, and they ain't doing it. We saw when we thought there was going to be a ceasefire that would last a little bit longer, I didn't, but other people did, that all of a sudden the UK and all these other countries go, all right, we're coming to help. Now that all the danger's over, we're coming to help. And then the second the danger kicks back up again, yeah, we're busy. We're busy. We're going to have a smoke at a cafe or something. Nowhere to be seen. Nowhere to be found. Where are all of them? Where are they? You said you would help. This is basically Trump saying, together we can do great things, and yet our European allies haven't been great allies. Instead, who's been our best ally so far during all this? Israel. Israel's been the one doing the best, helping us. Unending praise from people like Pete Hegseth, President Trump, and others, talking about how great it is working with Israel. World history evolves. World relationships evolve. It's time to have real allies like Israel that will actually contribute. Our Arab partners have been helping a lot more with this than any of our European partners. You're looking at a global realignment right now of what's going on as Europe is being overrun by terror supporters. The people who want the terrorists out of their country because they've been dealing with them for decades are the ones who are partnering on the side of freedom. On the side of freedom. That's what's going on right now. It's a massive global realignment. And people aren't watching history play out before our eyes. It's really fascinating to watch. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. Unfortunately, you can't watch what's going on here in Washington because Bob Ferguson's office is controlling all the communications, and now they're even being called out by left-wing media for it affecting programs. We'll give you all details when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, download the KVI app and, of course, subscribe on whatever your preferred podcast platform is. That way you never miss a minute of the show. Well, I saw a new report today from Axios. Hang on. Axios is not in my little black book of the right-wing media conspiracy. And they have here's the headline, Scoop, Governor sign-off rule snarls flow of information in Washington. It's by a woman named Melissa Santos, who's a reporter for Axios. She's got a whole Twitter thread about this. And what she's talking about is Governor Bob Ferguson.
Yeah, it's not my name. All right, Turd Ferguson.
Turd Ferguson's office rolled out a policy last summer requiring most agency media communications, including emails, replies to reporters, to go through them. We covered this at the time. We covered at the time that everything from every agency goes through Bob Ferguson's office, and they don't get back to you unless Bob Ferguson's office signs off on it. Talk about full transparency, right? They have also told agency staff not to tell reporters about it. But what's funny is Melissa Santos filed the public disclosure request. And here's what it says. I have received feedback from Brianna. Brianna is Bob Ferguson's comms person. Again this afternoon regarding our communications. Going forward, we should not reference the governor's office in any procedural context, including processes, deadlines, or timelines when communicating with reporters on inquiries. They've requested their office not be mentioned at all. So even though they're the ones controlling the communications, they don't want you knowing they're the ones controlling the communications. Please use the following language when setting expectations with requesters. Quote, we have adopted a new process for responding to inquiries and are working diligently to meet your deadline. However, we may need additional time to complete our review. We appreciate your patience and will follow up with you as soon as possible. Now, according to Axios, the policy has contributed to delays in releasing public information about federal shutdown impacts, bridge repair plans, vaccine access, among other topics. So you realize they went to find out about this stuff from the left's perspective. Oh, how's Trump and those Republicans and the fact that they can't get anything done affecting Washington State? But now you're finding out that the actual roadblock is Bob Ferguson and the Democrats. They also said that this new policy has been used to dodge questions, according to the agency itself. Here's what the email says. At times, agency staff said the policy was used to avoid answering tough questions, such as about funding for the Women, Infants, and Children Food Aid Program, which was affected by last year's federal government shutdown. Quote, last week we were instructed by the governor's office to decline all interview requests related to the WIC to avoid questions related to the state's budget shortfalls and why there was no backup funding for the program. Rachel Sims, a spokesperson for the State Department of Health, wrote an email to colleagues in October. Agency officials have also been told not to discuss the policy with reporters when it renders them unable to meet the deadlines. Internal emails show Washington agency officials concerned about their ability to relay information to Washington residents and do their jobs say this is a painful and arduous process. We have missed opportunities to share key information with the public. In some cases, Turd Ferguson has gotten personally involved in reviewing and editing press releases and talking points, contributing to even more delays. Ferguson requested changes to a second draft of an I-5 construction press release last fall. That's what your comms people do. Ferguson also personally reviewed interview talking points before state epidemiologist Scott Lindquist was cleared to speak with Politico about the bird flu last July, according to an email from a Ferguson staffer. The staffer apologized to DOH officials for the delay. So basically, his ego or his not wanting to be communicative with anybody is screwing everything up. Now, we know this has been interfering with other things as well. We know that, for example, Bob Ferguson never tells the press where he's going, when he's having a press conference, anything. It's usually they send out a press release afterwards, unless they really, 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 really want you there. You know what I think I need to do? I did this with the Seattle mayor's office and found out, yes, there was a blacklist, and yes, I was on it, and so were many other people you know. I think I have to do a public disclosure request for the blacklist from Turd Ferguson's office. And I think here's what we're going to find out. We'll just start with the A's, Ari Hoffman. Then go to the B's, Brandy Cruz. Then go to the C's, Jonathan Cho. And I think you're going to find out very, very quickly that they don't answer questions from anybody they don't want to answer questions from. They want to conceal what they're doing, which is why, some Democrats may have slapped 3 of us with a rule that they wouldn't give us press passes. According to Axios, staffers for 3 former governors say no such policies were in effect during their administrations. Brianna Aho, that's his comms person, defended the policy to Axios, saying a new administration has different ways of doing things. People are used to doing things a certain way and change can be hard. Oh, you mean concealing things and they're not putting up with it. When even the left-leaning media is mad at you, you really screwed up. Man, it'd be fun to run for governor just to argue this policy point and so many others with Turd Ferguson. I don't know, man. What would be more fun? Debating Turd Ferguson or debating Katie Wilson? Katie Wilson's like beating up a kid because it's just too easy with her, with that one. You heard yesterday when she was doing that whole press conference and got pulled away by one of her staff members. I think that staff member was dressed as the Easter Bunny, just pulling her away, just like Joe Biden. Quick, get her out of here. She got asked a hard question. Run, red alert, run. She can't be asked a hard question. Get her out of here. Quickly, quickly, quickly. So staffers, according to Axios, are frustrated by the glacial pace by which communications move through Ferguson's office and concerns show how it affects their ability to relay important information. They also described that the approval process is grueling, painful, and a continual barrier to getting things done. This is great. This is just so much fun. When the left-leaning media does its job, it's kind of fun sometimes. This is great. And accordingly, public health officials have been dealing with this policy as well. So the public health officials aren't saying what they want to say. They're saying what Bob Ferguson wants them to say. That's not science. That's not what about following the science? Fascinating. This is truly fascinating. We're going to follow this reporter's career with great interest. Only good news to wrap up the show. Your good news headlines heading into your evening commute to put a smile on your face. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Only good news to wrap up another amazing episode of the Ari Hoffman Show right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. And this is a question that's been on everybody's minds since the assassination attempt. What happened to all the food? They were just sitting down to eat. They didn't get a chance to eat because everybody was cleared out of there and the Secret Service was dealing with what they were dealing with. What happened to all the food? Well, some pictures have surfaced, and some of those pictures have shown some of the White House correspondents actually making off with the bottles of wine. Well, that's uncool, stealing all that wine. The wine's not going to go bad, so you shouldn't get rid of that. That's uncool. Though, my favorite moment from all the video of that insanity is Mashed Potatoes Guy. Have you seen Mashed Potatoes Guy? There's one guy while everybody's diving under tables who's just sitting there eating his mashed potatoes all by himself in the video. So he has apparently been identified. He is from New York. He says, I'm a New Yorker. We live with sirens and activity happening all the time. His name is Michael Glantz, and he's an agent at Creative Artist Agency. He says, I wasn't scared. There are hundreds of Secret Service agents hurtling themselves over tables and chairs, and I wanted to watch. First, so you get dinner and a show, I see. First of all, I have bad luck. I couldn't get bad back. I couldn't get on the floor. If I did get on the floor, they have to bring in people to get me off the floor. And number two, I'm a hygiene freak. There is no freaking way, he says. I was getting on my new tux on the dirty Hilton floor. It was not happening. So, okay. Now we know who Mashed Potatoes Guy is. We also know which reporters were stealing the wine, but what happened to all the food? This one here, according to Fox 13, according to the president of the White House Correspondents Association, the Hilton donated roughly 2,600 unserved dinners to 2 shelters for abused women and children. They were having lobster and steak that night. I don't think them kids appreciated it. They said they freeze-dried the steak and the lobster for longer shelf life before giving it to 2 shelters for abused women and children. So it wasn't just they filled up a couple foil pans like we do at the synagogue after an event to bring it down to the firehouse. No. They freeze-dried everything. So that means the staff stuck around to do this. They said huge thank you to the staff that worked through the night under terrible circumstances. So at least some good came out of it. It's nice they made that donation. That's really, really very nice. And we're going to continue following what's going to happen next. Are they going back to the Hilton for the next event? Are they doing that again? I mean, everything's kind of been paid for already. Do you get a refund on all that stuff? Is it a tax write-off? Does the White House Correspondents Association get a tax write-off? I saw this one here from page 6, switching gears entirely. So Phoebe Buffay, Lisa Kudrow from Friends, has been doing all these tell-all interviews about Friends recently. Some of them not for air, a little risque. I was a big Friends guy. I still love Friends. I don't know why people why people thought you could only watch Friends and not Seinfeld or Seinfeld not Friends. I didn't understand that fight. It was stupid because they were on at different times. They were both part of the must-see TV lineup. If you liked one, you could enjoy it. You didn't have to switch channels or anything.
I think there was a style to each that sometimes the person that liked one versus the other didn't like the other. You know what I mean?
Sure. I'm fine with that.
I mean, I'm sure there's a couple of day walkers like you that can, dip
go
into
between both worlds.
Yeah.
I like both of them. I watched both of them. I also like The Single Guy for the couple seasons that show was on with Jonathan Silverman in between all of them. I also watched ER, which was on after Seinfeld. I watched the whole must-see TV lineup every Thursday night.
I watched none of this.
You might be better off. I will tell you this, is that in my house, I only got 30 minutes of TV a night growing up. 30 minutes of TV. So oftentimes I would save my TV from the week for the must-see TV lineup because I want to watch all of that. That's right. But then again, I got to watch more TV.
Look at that. You have someone here. I had unlimited power.
And you didn't watch any of it.
Didn't watch any of it.
Okay. Well, Lisa Kudrow says that they are still earning $20 million a year each in residuals. That's a lot of money. That is crazy. She told the New York Post's page 6, the staggering amount she and the cast still earn from Friends while reflecting on the iconic show, an interview published by the Times of London last Thursday. So Kudrow played Phoebe Buffay, and let's not forget there was a time where they were earning $29,000 per episode. So let's do some quick math here. 25 episodes in a season, 29. That's a pretty good living right there. That's a few $100,000 a year. Then they negotiated their contracts because the show became such a big hit. They were earning $1 million an episode. So now you're earning $25 million a year. Now from residuals, from streaming and from TBS or TNT or whatever it's on, you're pulling in $20 million a year. You don't have to work for the rest of your life.
That's not happening again with TV, right?
No, it's not.
Like with streaming, they don't even have their like residuals. Is that even a thing?
Well, they still have them because during the last writer's strike, there was a how much do we get in residuals? That was a big thing of it.
What I'm saying is like the way streaming works now is the season is released.
Yes.
And the rerun is, it's still sitting up there.
It's still doing it.
If I want to watch it again.
Right.
But having other stations like local stations who then pay money to have TV shows put on,
sure.
Like something like Friends are in reruns and how many local stations across the country and around the world. That's just not going to happen with some of these streaming shows.
In fact, I saw an interview with Jerry Seinfeld not too long ago, and he says he feels like he got the last tickets to the amusement park before they tore it down or something, because it was basically that era, the end of the 90s, that was it. And then everything started to change more to this model. I mean, it was happening over the last 20, 25 years, but that was the end of that. That was really it. What was the last big hit show that everybody watched except for you? What was the last big show like that?
And we'll have to say that it's got to be regular television,
right?
One of the big four,
right? Not everybody has HBO. Maybe, like The Sopranos. It was huge. Game of Thrones, huge, but it's all on HBO.
Yeah, it was behind the pay.
Exactly, and that thing's not running in reruns on random stations.
No.
Even Mad Men on AMC, which was huge. Same kind of deal.
Yeah, same deal. What would it be? I don't even know what would be.
I gotta check my contract. Do I get residuals for rerun episodes when I'm not on air? Is that a thing? We'll renegotiate that for next time. We'll do that.
Good luck with that.
I like the way no, that's not happening. You know what? We'll give you residuals. We don't rerun your shows, man. We'll give you the residuals. That's why we have the fresh content every single day. Well, that's going to about wrap it up for us today, my friends. But fear not. We will be back tomorrow with a whole bunch of new content, including more stories about how much money other actors are making and you're not getting, but we will have more insane stories about the craziness here in Washington State. Turd Ferguson, Katie Wilson, the whole band of crazies we got running the place, plus more exciting interviews. You've been listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.